For years I've been an advocate for electrical technology. Let's get electric cars and electric trains and let electricity take humanity forwards. But recently I began to change my mind. I was mostly inspired by a book, The Invisible Rainbow by Arthur Firstenberg. And I think this would have even made Nikola Tesla have to rethink his theories in this practice. Nikola Tesla, one of my heroes, brought us AC/DC, not the band, but the electrical currents. And I wonder if he knew if he saw the evidence that's being collected together to show that electricity, radio waves, microwaves, all these things are affecting not just us humans, but the planet. I've always known that we don't really know what electricity is, apart from the fact it's an invisible force that powers our lives. But I find the phenomena intriguing. I remember reading George Gurdjieff's words with interest. Gurdjieff said that electricity has been around forever and past civilizations used it too, but not like us. We misuse it. So this book by Arthur Firstenberg was a revelation, and I highly recommend it. He fully researches how electricity came back into our lives in the 1700s and how the people that brought electricity or rediscovered electricity and its uses also warned against it, saying that it was not safe at all. People were dying from electrocution, people were having huge accidents in their labs, all written about in this book, so do go and have a look at that. But what I find interesting is that people were, even though they were warning about it, people loved it. The general public loved it. They used to have parlour games and parlour parties where they could rent out this electrical device that would electrify everybody or somebody in the room, and a pretty lady, and people would go and have the electric kiss. How funny. And I'm just going to do a little quote from Firstenberg's book, The Invisible Rainbow. Then there was the electric kiss, a form of recreation that even preceded the invention of the Leyden jar, but became much more exciting afterwards. Physiologist Albrecht von Haller at the University of Göttingen declared incredulously that such parlour games had taken the place of quadrille. Could one believe, he wrote, that a lady's finger, that her whalebone petticoat should send forth flashes of true lightning, and that such charming lips could set on fire a house? End quote. So the general public mainly used electricity in its early days of the 1700s for fun, for parlour games, whereas now obviously we use it in so many things. But some of the inventors back in the 1700s had warned against it. Research was being done into the medical effects, the detrimental medical effects it was having on us and to our well-being. And there were doctors that were realising that people were beginning to have strange diseases that they'd never noticed before, strange diseases that they couldn't explain, or people were getting the same kind of disease but not having the same, didn't live the same lifestyles, or hadn't been near each other, so it wasn't an infectious disease, it was a disease that suddenly just seemed to come on. And I know I'm not explaining that very well because I'm not a doctor, but in this book, The Invisible Rainbow, Firstenberg really explains how people researched into this and were calling it a neurological disease because people were feeling unwell, but not in the way that they were, showing symptoms. It was a very strange thing, and like an invisible disease, a bit like electricity. But yeah, go and read the book about this. So people were getting unwell, people were noticing something was wrong, and there was also a connection as to the electricity coming online at that time. But the major companies that took electricity on as a business ignored the warnings or reworked the results to fit their own agenda, to get electricity into every home. And Firstenberg's book gives a thoroughly researched account into all this and how this all happened. How there was a bit of gaslighting going on back in them days. Gaslighting. We really needed electrical lighting. So this book is a must read for those who can see humanity is sick and want to know the cause. It's that invisible energy we all have around us. Electricity, radio waves, microwaves are all causing illnesses. There are many will want to say, oh, it's all neurological. But this book has proof to show, with evidence and links, that this is not the case. Many illnesses that have been unable to be described or cured seem to have started up during the time that electricity sprung up. And Furstenberg also shows that influenza started appearing during these days, during electricity and any kind of technical advancement. Influenza turns up. When we started using radio waves, there was a huge influx of influenza that year. When we started having radar put across the planet, again, huge influx of influenza. And then when mobile phones and laptop computers came along, the same again. Huge rise in influenza during them times. And some people also are conspiracy theorists, but the 5G is trying to be rolled out, and suddenly we have the plague going across the world. But that's just conspiracy. But who wants to hear this? Who wants to know this? Not many. Electricity has made our lifestyles easier, given us mobile phones and computers, light and heating. It's made our lives a lot easier than how we were before the 1700s. We would rather have electricity and all these gadgets and such like than to see our health get better, or recognise that all this electricity is having an impact on our health. It's all unknown factors, and people won't look at it that it is possibly electrical pollution. We have a medical world that rarely knows how to treat people because it does not understand the implications all this electricity, the electrical pollution, radio waves, microwaves and such like has on us. It would rather guess that it's neurological than study the evidence. And The Invisible Rainbow is a brave book putting forward theories and evidence to back up the claims, and links to back up all these claims that electrical developments affect our health, affect the environment, and also been affecting wildlife. He's able to show through other people's research that many of the animals that have become extinct in the last 100 years, there's a link to electrical pollution. I'm a big lover of bees, bumblebees, and I know that in the Isle of Wight there was a big problem about bumblebees suddenly just disappearing or not doing what they should be doing and acting strangely. And there were people that investigated this, and they realised that at that time on the Isle of Wight, when this was happening, also various, I think they were army electrical buildings were set up, for radar, for their gadgets and such like. At the same, on that year that the bees started acting weird and disappearing. Electrical pollution is being ignored, but it's something that needs to be looked at before it totally changes the world creatures, the world's bodies, people's lifestyles, and alters our own human organic development into some kind of zombie deformed version of humanity. Because there's been tests and it's shown that if you use certain electrical vibrations, radiation, microwave and such like on insects, it destroys them. Maybe not kills them outright straight away, but it causes deformities even is the word I'm looking for. It mucks up their own system, their own electrical system, because every creature on this planet has an electrical system running through them. There is something to do with electricity that's not just people have created it, in their laboratories. We have an electrical vibration through us. There's an electrical current running around the world that we're all a part of. And maybe us misusing electricity today is upsetting that electrical current within us. And this is what Arthur Furstenberg goes on about in his book, and I don't mean goes on about it in a negative way, in a very positive way, to explain why this is happening. Anomalies in the natural world and anomalies on us humans in our health. There's links to prove that all this is electrical pollution. First Bird also looks at in the Invisible Rainbow the people that tried to make the modern day world aware of this, and there were many in the last 50 years or so who were aware that electrical pollution was having an effect on people. In America, sadly, Congress passed a law that actually made it illegal for cities and states to regulate any new technology. So that's saying that instead of making sure it's a safer place, anyone can do anything, really. It doesn't matter what you have, it doesn't matter what effect microwave radiation or electricity has on the environment or on humans. You know, a lot of the research done into this saw that there was effects on the heart, on our nervous systems, on our glands and organs in our bodies. But one of the in-depth researches into all this was how it does affect all this electrical pollution, our inner bodies, and it looks at how it breaks down our cells within us, and this could be why there's been such an increase in things like MS and multiple sclerosis and other I don't want to say diseases, but they are diseases. You know, this could all be down to electrical pollution on our cells, infecting us, causing things like heart disease and you know, even the cancers. You know, could electricity or electrical pollution be affecting that kind of thing to our detriment, not in helping us? But it's also affecting animals, as I was saying earlier, and there's many reports of how various animals were being affected. In the 1930s and the 1940s, there was tests being done in the Philadelphia Zoo where they were seeing that many of the animals were acting differently. Lesions was beginning to appear on some of the creatures, you know, the different animals that are in the zoo. And they looked into all this and began to see that some of the animals were dying much younger than they should be. Heart disease was appearing. Sclerosis was appearing in many of their arteries. And this was all in the animals. And near to the zoo had been opened in these years a huge electrical station. In this book, they start talking the Invisible Rainbow. They start talking about how people can see, smell, hear electricity. And he starts talking about the effects it's been having on people's ears, which was quite an interesting one for me, because for years I thought I just had an alien implant in my right ear or something, because it throbs often. I could be out and about and suddenly it starts vibrating inside my head, and it's kind of, it's uncomfortable. I wouldn't say it hurts, it's just uncomfortable. And for years I thought, oh, alien implant. But now I'm reading this book, I've realised it's probably electrical pollution. And that I'm, you know, being caught up in some kind of electrical high vibration at that time, or low vibration, depending on which type of electricity it is. And it's affecting me. Which is why I can't pin down when and where it happens, because it keeps changing. And I did my own little test in the house that I live in. I said to the other tenants, I don't want to know when you're putting the washing machine on or the dryer. But I could sense it when it was coming on. I could feel my ear start to vibrate. Or if someone's computer comes on, I can sometimes feel a change in energy now. But that's because I've worked on it and because I've been reading this book. But I wonder if before, when I used to feel it, I just thought I didn't take proper notice of it. I'm not saying it's a big click or anything like that, but you can just feel the energies change. I can feel when the heating comes on. I used to think it's because maybe I could hear it clicking, but now I've realised no, it's the electrical pollution coming off it. Now in this book, The Invisible Rainbow, the author goes into the biological functions of our bodies and how microwave radiation and electricity affects us. It can starve the heart of oxygen at certain levels, or it could be affecting our cellular levels. And of course each person's going to be different, because we're all made up, even though we're, you know, a human being, we're all made up differently. Our bodies inside are, we've still got the organs all in the same places, but we have them at different degrees of working well or not. And Furstenberg interviewed lots of doctors who investigated this kind of thing, who were looking at the behaviour of electrical pollution on the blood, on the brain, on the organs, damage that occurs at levels of radiation that we may not be aware are out there. And as I said to you before, a lot of the companies, electrical companies, either lied about their research or gaslit us about the research as to what they actually were finding. But again, you can find all them stories in this book. Many different doctors started looking into the link between stress and anxiety and electrical pollution. And people were beginning to realise there was a connection, there is a link, that electrical pollution causes anxiety neurosis. I think that's one of Freud's terms, not one of my favourite guys, but you know, maybe Freud misunderstood what it all was and didn't understand the connection between electrical pollution and neurosis. And I'll just do another quote from the book, and this is where some people were doing research into all this. This is in the irritable heart chapter, there's a bit of a clue there. Study of civilians with neurocirculatory asthenia revealed that these people typically did not develop any of the diseases that are supposed to be caused by anxiety, such as high blood pressure, peptic ulcer, asthma, or ulcerative colitis. However, they did have abnormal electrocardiograms that indicated that the heart muscle was being starved of oxygen, and that there were sometimes indistinguishable from the EKGs of people who had actual coronary artery disease or actual structural damage to the heart. So there seems to be a connection of electricity to how our bodies are being polluted, dying, damaged, made diseased. And I've noticed also, as I've said before, about the power lines everywhere and how different animals are affected by the power lines, how the birds are affected by the power lines that are scattered all across our world. And you can see how trees that grow near power lines do not grow properly. You know, we can see this with our own eyes, and yet we still ignore what's going on. So I just wanted to do a little bit about the birds in, where was this? I think this was Switzerland and in Delhi. Right, okay, this is a quote from Furstenberg's book, where he's been talking to some of the people studying, the zoologists studying the effect of electro pollution on animals. So this Dr. Patazzi says, continuous penetration of electromagnetic radiation through the body of birds affects their nervous system and their navigational skills. They become incapable of navigation and foraging. The birds which nest near towers are found to leave the nest within 1 week. 1 to 8 eggs can be present in a clutch. The incubation lasts for 10 to 14 days, but the eggs which are laid in nests near towers fail to hatch even after 30 days. And that's the end quote. And these towers are the electrical towers and the telephone towers that are springing up everywhere around our world. And he goes on to discuss about how birds are probably affected because birds have feathers, and feathers are, let me make sure I get this right, they are fine receivers of aerials, fine receiving aerials for microwaves. They're like aerials, feathers are like aerials on them, and like insects have antennas and aerials on top of their heads, which is why they're probably being affected by all this electrical pollution. And we need the animal system. We can't have all these animals disappearing. The animal system all helps keep the world working round. We all need each other. It's a reciprocal maintenance world. Everything needs everything else. We need the insects to spread the seeds of the plants, and the birds to do the same, and then the plants give us fruit and shade, and trees that give us oxygen. You know, we all need each other, so if we start getting rid of certain species, the whole ecosystem starts to fall apart. So what I think I'm trying to say here, though it might have been a bit of a jumbled show, is that we need to think what we're doing with all this electrical pollution, and maybe rethink how we use electricity, and perhaps find a more ecological way of using it that does not destroy the planet, does not destroy the creatures that live on it, does not upset physically, mentally the humans that live on this planet. We need to find a way of living with electricity in a way that lives with us, and we can all live in a happy world rather than have all these diseases. Though, you know, that all comes back to, again, the idea of we've got to look at these companies that do all this, that pollute our world with all these pollutants and this electrical pollution, and find ways of sorting out this in an environmental way. I know the industrialised civilization enjoys its way of controlling us all and thinking it's idealised all our lives and our worlds, but really it's all about monetary instead of all about being the people and the animals and being a social company. And we need to change all that somehow. You know, I don't know how. I don't know how to get this, except for to get this message out there to people. We need to change the way that companies work, how we live, and become more compatible with every life form that lives on this planet and with Mother Earth herself. The final chapter in this book is all about people being affected in the modern day with their computers and their phones. I myself noticed that I was having strange blotches coming up on my skin, and it does seem to be when I've been in front of the laptop for too long. I kept thinking it was to do with eating hot spicy food, but it wasn't. I went away travelling for a while, for a few weeks, didn't use the laptop, and my face cleared up, but I still ate hot spicy food while I was away. Come back, start using the laptop, and suddenly I've got blotches on my face again, particularly on my forehead. And Fostenberg talked to people about this, and to doctors and people that were suffering from what they were calling screen dermatitis, and that many people were getting this on their hands or on their faces. And I do remember with one of my laptops that whenever I was using it, my right hand would start feeling really hot and felt like it was getting, I wouldn't say shooting pains, but there were strange aches or pains coming into it, and I'm sure that was to do with the laptop. Anyway, he talks about how having our laptops on our laps is perhaps not a good thing, and I got a little table for mine, but I could still feel the radiation from the laptop coming down into my legs, and it felt like it was, I wanted to say microwaving my legs. But then when I read this book, he has an interview with a lady this was happening to too, and she says, quote, "It felt like my legs were cooking from the inside," end quote, when she has the laptop on her lap. So she doesn't do that anymore, and I don't do that anymore. I definitely, if I'm going to use the laptop, I have it at the table or on a table further away from me if I don't need to do typing. If I'm just doing my little videos or something, I try to have it as far away from me as possible, but so that people can still hear. And I'm just going to do one more quote from the book. "We are living in a world where information does not increase knowledge nor open eyes. The cultural barriers are too great. Society has been in denial for too long. And yet it is impossible to continue on the present path any longer. Decisions are being made to intensify the global microwave rain before 2020 from a steady drizzle to a downpour." And one has to wonder, you know, how things have been changing, what it's doing to our lives and turning everyone into zombies. Surely that's just not a good thing. And if it's giving us health problems as well and ruining the ecosystem of this planet, we need to look at this. This is a really important thing. So I'm asking people to perhaps, you know, either do your own research or get this book where all the research is there for you, and then have a rethink of what we need to do about our technocracy, technological age. Is this the way forward for us or not? I'm not saying that we need to get rid of technology, and I'm not saying we need to go back to the Stone Age. Maybe we need to go back to analogue. I don't know how many of you will remember analogue, which came along before the digital revolution. But we need to figure out how to stop all these microwaves and electrical pollution spreading around our planet and affecting us all, really.